Hello, welcome to the Breakpoint. Episode 2, we're going to be talking about kind of how to be more productive doing web app development. And today we got some really good stuff. We're focusing on the Chrome DevTools in this episode. And specifically, we're going to show off some of the abilities to debug your SASS style sheets. So with me over in London is Addy Osmani. And Addy's just going to get right into it and show you kind of how SASS debugging works inside Chrome DevTools.
Awesome. So the first thing we're going to look at today, as Paul was saying, are some brand new features in the DevTools for people that love working with SASS. So I'm going to go over to my screen. Now let's fire up the DevTools. Okay, so I've got a SASS project in front of me at the moment. Now the first thing you probably want to do with this is start inspecting stuff. So we've got a header at the moment. Let's inspect it. So I've got my header in front of me right now. I can go and I can do some awesome stuff. I can like bump up the font size. It looks hot. It looks sexy. And what's even better is that I can now go and click on style.css to see the original file in the source view. Now this is great, except for, so you can see like there's some line numbers here. It does show me my selector, but because I'm using SASS, this is actually the compiled version of my style sheet file. And any changes that I make to this file are only going to be reflected in that. It's not going to be reflected in the original SASS file. And whenever I go and I try compiling my source files, these changes that I make to this file are going to get overwritten. So what can we do that's better than this? Now, last week we showed you that if you go to Chrome flags, so let's do that very quickly. So Chrome flags, you can actually enable some experiments. So let's go to Developer Tools. The first thing you want to do is enable Developer Tools experiments. Now, normally you'll have to refresh your browser after that, but once you do, and you go to the Settings cog, you'll see that there's an Experiments tab there. Now, the option that we're interested in is the one that says Support for SASS. So let's enable that. Now, after you've enabled Support for SASS, you're going to need to reload the DevTools and refresh the page. So we're going to do that very quickly. And let's open up the DevTools once again. Now, if I go back to Elements and we inspect our H1 once again, what you'll see is that we've now got access to style.scss. And if I click into this, I can actually edit with syntax highlighting my original SASS file. Now this is really cool. You've got the nesting, you can see all of your beautiful SASS source, which is great. And I can make changes to this. Now, before you actually make changes, if you want them to be visible in the DevTools, you need to go and save this. So I'm just going to do Command-S to save this. Alternatively, you can right-click and do Save As, and save it to the original location that you were working in. And now I can just go and make changes to this. So before I make changes, just to let you know, so I'm currently running Live Reload and SASS Watch in the background, so it's keeping an eye on what I'm doing. And if I make a change, so I've just bumped up the font size. Let's Command-S to save that. So what you've seen is it's gone, and without me having to reload the page or anything, it's compiled my SASS file, it's gone and it's reloaded the page, so I'm actually seeing the changes in real time of what I've done in my source file. And that's cool. Let's read that back and save it. Now, there's a mix-in. So what actually, I want to make a change to a mix-in, right? So we've got a text shadow on HTML5 please at the moment, which is cool. Now let's say that I started editing and wanted to make some changes, and maybe I went and I did Command Save without knowing that I made a mistake. Now normally with your CSS editing workflow, there's no sort of linting or error messaging to tell you you've done something wrong and something's been messed up. But here, as you can see, because I've got like Live Reload and all my other tools running in the background, I get some nice error messages that say, okay, well, there's some invalid CSS. And it'll tell you exactly what you've been doing wrong. Now, in my case, I actually want to replace this completely. So let's first dismiss this. Now, in my case, I actually want to go and use a mix-in that I previously defined. So I've just added my mix-in. I'm going to do Command-S once again. And there we go.
Nice.
That's hot, right? That's pretty
slick.
slick.
Yeah, I dig it.
Now, on top of this, so that's really cool. You've now got much better support for SASS editing in the DevTools, and that will help with your general workflow. But on top of that, you've also got the ability to use all the other benefits that the sources panel still gives you. So if I went to, say, local modifications, so we were showing you a little bit of this last week. If I go to local modifications, I actually get complete editing history. So I can revert back to any point in my editing workflow without having to go anywhere outside the DevTools. And that's just, it feels so nice to be able to do that. So yeah, I think that's it for the SASS portion of my demo. What did you think, Paul?
That's pretty hot. So I think it's cool because basically, like, typically you're in the situation where you're just like editing your SASS and then you compile it down and then you'll make a change and you'll be like, well, somehow I have to transport the change that is made in the DevTools back to the original like way that I authored it, and it's a bit awkward. And here you can just kind of develop directly inside the tool and get your immediate feedback that you want, but you don't have to be translating back and forth between your SASS and your CSS. So it's dope. I dig it.
I like it.
Cool. All right. So now that we got SASS under control, we got some more things to show you. First, we're going to show you some cool things in the Chrome DevTools console. Then we're going to show you skinning and customizing the theme and look of the Chrome DevTools. Some deeper inspection features inside the DevTools, and some goodies at the end. But I'm going to show you some good stuff in the console. Now, the first thing is, if you've ever worked on a page that, for instance, doesn't have jQuery, doesn't have a dollar function defined, and you open up the console and then you type dollar, and you start to like pass in what normally you would be saying to jQuery, and it like works or it doesn't, or returns an empty set, and you're like, why is there a dollar available inside my console when I don't have it on the page? This is the command line API. So I'm going to show a little bit of what's going on here. There was a good question on Stack Overflow a bit ago about why there's a dollar and double dollar inside the DevTools. And so this actually comes originally from Firebug. It's the command line API. These are all things that are available within the context of the console. So we have dollar, double dollar, XPath, $0, which represents the element you have selected. Even inspect, you can pass a element into inspect, and it'll go over to the elements panel, and you'll be viewing that. So some really cool stuff in here. But people have been curious about why double dollar is selector and why single dollar has been ID. And the funny situation is that this is all about kind of JavaScript history. Double dollar was originally used by Prototype, and it was used as a way to grab all the selectors. But then jQuery was like, we'll just throw that on dollar. And so now there's been this weird situation where the legacy of double dollar has been what's available inside Chrome DevTools and Firebug and Opera Dragonfly. But at the same time, everyone is used to grabbing selectors, not IDs, with single dollar. So Addy and I were, we met up this summer to work on some Chrome DevTools stuff, and we were like, kind of, this comes up now and again, and we were like, we should probably change this, right?
Yeah.
So we went in and we talked to some of the developers behind Firebug and the Firefox DevTools. We talked to the Dragonfly guys, and we're like, let's change this? I guess that's how it worked.
Pretty much.
And so basically, we changed the definition of dollar inside the command line API in these developer tools. So let's just show a little demo of how this works now. So I'm going to ask for, this is the way that it used to work. You'd pass in an ID to dollar, and it would grab that element with that ID. But
that just feels a little bit awkward, right? Because you're used to using jQuery these days with a $, and maybe you want to be able to stick other characters in front of it or use classes and all other stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. So now what we did is we changed it, but then we also made sure that there is a kind of like a little catch so that you're not totally confused when it doesn't return anything. So it'll let you know that indeed there is a fallback situation here, and so it'll recommend that you throw in the pound. Then you get that. So this works for everything. I can be passing it proper selectors, and it'll always return the first element that matches. It basically works like query selector. So it's a breaking change. It's a little backwards incompatible, but we think that it matches the common 2012 use of dollar and kind of fits expectations a little bit better. So I also wanted to show some other good stuff in here. Another feature that was added somewhat recently to the Chrome DevTools console is $_. And so I believe this comes from a Perl history, but it essentially refers to the previously evaluated statement. So I'm going to go and grab HTTP logo offset width. Cool. And now I'm going to add a little bit of WebKit transition for fun, because we're going to do some good stuff. And now we're going to change the width 500 plus $_ plus pics. And so what this is going to do is it's going to grab this 275 that was evaluated right here and use it in place here. So now when I evaluate this, yeah.
Wow. That is so awesome.
It's definitely against branding guidelines, but that's cool. That's cool.
You're going to be getting a call from marketing any minute now.
Yeah. All right. So let's bring that back down. Okay, cool. So $_, small little convenience thing, but I hope it comes in useful. I know that I am commonly referencing things up and down, so it should be good. Another thing that I wanted to show real quick is the new object preview logging. So let's see. I think we have an object. I was scouting around for an object earlier. Yeah, here we go. So this is just some weird object that's available on the Google homepage. Don't really know what it is, but normally if you had in your application code something like console log, and you did something like you were logging out this thing, then you would get this little object name, and you get the triangle, and then you'd come over here and you'd click it. And that's okay, but we thought that it would be nicer if you got a little preview of what's going on. So now when you do this, you do get a preview. So it kind of takes a quick snapshot of the values inside the object. And so you can see kind of at a glance. So this becomes really useful, especially when you have a big object let's grab window and we'll grab location. And you can see very quickly from a console log what some of the properties on this object are. There's also another part of this, which is that previously the values here, when you logged them out, they were lazy evaluated. So this ended up in a situation where sometimes you could log an object, change it, log it again, and when you went back to your console and opened them back up, they would be the same, which you wouldn't expect. So that essentially got fixed with this change. So you get both a preview, and that preview is evaluated at log time instead of at expansion time. Does that make sense, Addy?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, good. Okay, I think that's it for console. Yeah. Do you want to show a little bit? I know that you made this cool post on Google Plus a little bit ago about theming and skinning your Chrome DevTools.
Yeah. So I was really surprised at how much people wanted this stuff. It was it's crazy. It was we've got almost 1,000 shares on that. It's insane. So I normally when you get a brand new text editor, the first thing a lot of time you do is you go and try to find a theme for it that you like, and it because you're going to be spending a lot of time in your editor, you want it to look great. Sometime probably about a year ago, a great developer named Darcy Clark figured out, that you can go and you can actually customize the look of the Chrome DevTools. And I'm going to share my screen for just a minute. So this is Darcy's blog post that I'm going to be showing. And sort of, he started this thread about, how you can go and you can customize this regardless of what your operating system is. And there were so many people that were interested in this idea.
Yeah.
And so, a year later, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see, where people took this? And so I put together this post where I summarized a bunch of the different themes that people had worked on, and it went crazy. And there's probably 20, 30 themes available for the DevTools these days. Some of them, let's take a look at one of them. So, so this is a theme called MNML. Just loading up real minimal, something like that. But it's really cool. You can actually customize almost every single part of the DevTools to look like whatever you want. There's some people that have gotten rid of the text next to the icons. Some people have bumped up the size of different parts to it. It's been really interesting.
I would probably apply a WebKit transition to a lot of things, and do some 3D transforms. So instead of switching panels, when you go from console to elements, it does a 3D or something. Just putting it out there.
So
awesome.
what Paul is saying is that right after this, you can expect Mother effing Chrome DevTools.
That'd be nice.
That's what he's saying. On the back of that post, there was this really cool guy named Pascal Kremp that started working on a little gallery for DevTools themes, which I thought was cool. Because as much as this stuff is up on GitHub, it's hard to find it. And you need previews, you need information about what exactly it actually customizes. And so he put together this website called DevThemes, so DevThemes.com.
Wow.
And it just came out this week, but there are already sort of theme authors that have been sticking up their themes on this. And you can just go into any theme, take a preview of some screenshots of it, go grab the source and just apply it to your DevTools. And I thought it was just kind of cool. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, and I guess we should point out that the way that this works is that you're applying just a bunch of CSS into your Chrome's user style sheet, and it's just scoped within the DevTools. But it's just CSS that you're applying in there, and so you can do anything you want. You can be you could probably use some of those text shadows that we showed earlier to really give some oomph to your tools.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. A little bit more inspection stuff. So I'm going to show a few things. So this is so in the Chrome DevTools now, there's new support for some kind of emerging, have emerged features. I'm going to show Shadow DOM, IndexedDB, and file system. So Shadow DOM is emerging. It's a fundamental part of the new web component spec, and I'm really excited about how that's going to affect web app development. But in fact, a lot of the things that are already inside the Chrome developer tools, that it's already inside of Chrome and WebKit are built with Shadow DOM. So this is just a video element. I have some funny transforms around it, so just for fun. But really, we're just dealing with a video element here. I'm going to inspect this. Oh, come on. I'm using a Command-Shift-C, which is my favorite keyboard shortcut for just diving right into inspect mode immediately. And if I open up the video element, I do see my source elements here, but I also see shadow root. And so this is pretty cool because we dive in through these divs, and now you'll see we have a button, an input type range, button range, and so the actual UI. This is the controls that ship inside Chrome for the video element. This is just built with actual elements with form controls. The input type range is actually has Shadow DOM in it as well, so it's just made out of divs. So this is kind of a common. This is a Shadow DOM that ships inside WebKit, but this is available for everything. You can turn it on the same way that you saw Addy turn on the SASS experiment earlier. Now, let's see. This is some IndexedDB. So this is just a little demo application that uses IndexedDB. And typically, up until now, there hasn't been a good way to see what's actually stored in my IndexedDB inside Chrome. So as you can imagine, now there is. We dive into resources, and inside the application, we just have a bunch of items, their descriptions. Some are in a cart, some are in a wish list, and I'm going to add a tablet into my wish list. Cool. And now when I come down here, see my IndexedDB. These are my data stores. I have one of them. And wish list. Here is my tablet. So it's just all my objects that I have stored inside my IndexedDB are just available to peruse here. And I can also filter right upside here. The last one is file system. So the file system API allows you to save real files and folders to the actual disk. This is great for very large files, but you can use it with a lot. So let's see. This little app, I can create new folder. Hello. Awesome file txt. And while I'm at it, I'll also drag in a JavaScript file. And so this is just adding files into my local file system store, this app. And now I come over into resources, and we can see what's actually stored here. The folder that I made, the image, the file, and the JavaScript and HTML that I just dragged in. So you immediately see what, in fact, is stored there.
That's really slick.
Yeah, it's hot. So if you're using some of these advanced features, we want to make sure that we have good developer support for you to understand how this is behaving. So check those out. Addy, should we mention a little bit about what's going on with Yeoman these days?
Yeah, why not? So Yeoman just shipped a new version quite recently, 0.9.4, I believe. And we've got a lot of work going on at the moment, trying to work on Yeoman 1.0 and the direction in which we want the project to take. So some of the things we're trying to look at doing are upstreaming some of the different Yeoman tasks that you guys are used to using to Grunt, so the broader Grunt community can start using those. And we're trying to see what we can do about making some of our tooling, so things like our scaffolding, better available to broader parts of the community. So we're going to try making sure that if you're a Grunt user or a Yeoman user, you can use those tools more easily together. And we're going to have some more news about that stuff coming up in a future show.
Nice. Addy, let's do some questions.
Questions, okay.
We got some good ones that came in. We'll take a few of them. So let's see. We haven't read through these before, so we'll just see how it goes.
No, we haven't.
All right, the latest version of Safari ships with a forked version of DevTools. Does it mean that Apple's no longer involved in the development of standard WebKit Inspector? Is there any collaboration between Chrome and Safari teams in this matter? The way that it works is that Inspector has a lot of parts, and there's a back end of Inspector that has the instrumentation inside of WebKit, and then there is the front end. So Chrome DevTools, the front end of Chrome DevTools is actually upstreamed, like 100% of it is actually present in WebKit, and so that's what's there. And Safari 6 went in a new direction as far as its UI, and I think it's pretty cool to see. And so the instrumentation is still shared in the background. So and there's still plenty of collaboration between the teams. New features that are coming up. Both teams are very interested in making sure that we can improve the developer experience. And so things are good. You can just check out the WebKit bug tracker. All new features are tracked there, and you can hop on and see both teams working on the same kind of stuff. So yes, it's good.
Cool.
All right. Yarrick asks, is it
Wow,
possible...
a lot of these are from Yarrick. Sorry, go ahead.
Yarrick asks good questions. Yeah, it's good. Is it possible to observe in real time which callbacks are fired by DOM events? I often forget to unsubscribe from events that are no longer needed, which causes them to accumulate and slow down my app with time. Okay. Yes. 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 Okay, so you can... There's a few ways around this, or on this. So so if I look at Chrome DevTools and see if we get some... Yeah, nice. Okay. So here we have, this is the Chrome DevTools of these inspector questions that I have. And I'm selecting the body element right now here, and we can see all the event listeners that are registered for this element. And we can click into them to identify exactly where it's coming from. Like I have a Chrome extension that's registering a click on the document, and then this minified file that is also digging into things. So you can definitely see what's bound. And then if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can identify, for instance, what you can break when event listeners are about to be fired. So let's say that I want to identify on click what's going on. So let's see if I can do this. Mouse, click. Yeah, nice. All right, cool. So now we're breaking, and we're actually breaking inside of my event handler. I'm going to prettify this. Hope it works. There we go. Cool. All right, so now we're actually broken inside of the event handler for this click. And if I can just, I can hit play. And if there was another event handler that was bound to click for this action, I would now be broken inside of that. So those are basically your two good ways to get an idea of what's still bound for those elements.
I'll also add that if you're having trouble with sort of event listeners or handlers that aren't being unsubscribed to or unbound, you can also use our profiling tools to find those pain points in your application to figure out where particular amounts of memory are being used and so on. And we're going to try getting out some better documentation about that stuff soon.
Yeah. All right. Can we share some plans for DevTools related to responsive design?
Yeah, I don't mind showing something about this. So
All right,
I'm going to share my screen again very quickly. Right, so we briefly mentioned last week the idea of if you go to the overrides panel. So again, if you've got experiments enabled, you'll get all of these options. But I do believe most of these are available and stable as well. But if you go to the settings cog and you go to overrides, you can override a bunch of stuff that will help you with sort of your responsive design workflow, including things like device metrics. So if you wanted to go and override your screen resolution, if you wanted to override your device orientation, and so on, so you can get a feel for the different breakpoints in your sort of media query design flow. These tools can help with that. And if you go back to the first episode of the Breakpoint, I actually preview some of this stuff. But yeah, there are definitely some tools in there that will help you with responsive design. Do we have anything more planned for responsive design, Paul?
That's a good summary of things. I will also point out that normally the Chrome window, if you're just resizing it for funsies, it will max, its min width will be 400 pixels, and a lot of people want to go down to below 360. So if you just dock your DevTools to the right, using the bottom left icon.
Actually, Paul, do you mind if I show that? Because we've been getting a lot of questions on Stack Overflow and Twitter lately about how you properly dock these days in Canary. So we changed this recently. So one thing you used to be able to find was sort of how to dock to right in the settings cog. But we've changed this now to be an icon. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it. I'll bump this up as much as I can. So in the left-hand corner, in the bottom left-hand corner of the DevTools, if you click and hold on the Layout Manager icon, it'll go and change the orientation of, it'll change the position of this stuff. It's actually it's expanded in my case. Whoa.
Uh-oh.
There we go. So click
go.
and hold. Yeah. So click and hold on that icon, and you'll be able to dock to right once again. So yeah, it's slightly different, but it still works just the same.
Yep. So it'll now actually, another improvement that just landed is it'll remember what your last state was, and so you can just keep clicking it to toggle between bottom and right, for instance. And we're also going to be, I think it landed like yesterday, is per tab setting. So like let's say in one application you really want to see it, your DevTools on the bottom, and on the next tab over you really want it positioned on the right, and now you can manage that just fine. Yeah, but for responsive design, what I was going to say was that when it is docked to right, you can just change the split between your DevTools and your page, and just bring it all the way down to like 100 pixels wide. So that helps a lot when you're testing media queries, for instance. All right, we'll do one last question. So this is also coming in from Yarek, and he asks, why support for SASS and not just agnostic CSS preprocessor support? So right now, SASS was chosen first, just to kind of like test things out, see that it works. And also, SASS already had 2 different debug modes where it outputted both line numbers and a lot of debug information. And Chrome DevTools supports both of those. So you can compile SASS with enable line numbers, or I think it's called enable debug info. And Chrome DevTools is able to pick up the line number mappings from that. In the future, we'd like to see SASS output a proper source map. And so it can use source map version 3. And that's like where things will be going. If either Less or Stylus are able to generate a source map, then support for them is really no problem. And source maps are totally language agnostic. And so, yeah, I think that's the summary there. One more thing. So there's one last feature inside Chrome DevTools that is pretty new. I wanted to show it. And this is styled console messages.
Prepare to have your mind blown.
Wow, OK. Typically, you'll console log, and it logs. It's good, but sometimes you want a little bit more pizzazz, and I don't blame you. But so if we take a look at how this works, if I just paste in these 2 guys, then yeah, check that out. So
wow.
Yeah. So this is actually Firebug has supported this for a little bit of time, and so we do a %c, and then we take the last argument that's sent to log, and this is just a bunch of CSS that we send over, and that just applies into there.
And I can include any CSS that I want in there.
Yeah, that's I don't think there's a blacklist or a whitelist. So
see, you can see where we're going with this, right?
All right, so I'm going to bring up one that I prepared a little bit ago. I have it over in my snippets. And so let's take a short little message. And instead of a background and color, we're going to kind of turn it up a little bit, add a bit more CSS. And now we're just going to use straight up console.log. Now, to send this to the console, I can just click this run icon down at the bottom. Oh, yeah. So this is my console. We got, it's pretty good looking. You can do anything you want here. And I think it's really, really important to communicate with pizzazz.
Gradients. With gradients is what he's saying. With as many gradients as possible.
I like it. All right. I think that's it for this episode of The Breakpoint.
Well,
so
that's it.
We do have some late-breaking questions on YouTube.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So what they want to know is if you guys are allowing developers to use Yeoman with existing apps like Rails.
Good question. Yep. So we've heard this a little bit. Addy, do you want to tackle this?
Sure. So we've had a lot of feedback from developers in different communities, from PHP, from Rails, from Node and others, and everyone wants to be able to use some sort of back end with Yeoman, because if you're building a web app, you're going to have some sort of back end that's your data source, right? Or just doing server side processes. Now, what we're going to be doing in the coming months is trying to improve your workflow so that it's easier for you to hook into a different back end or hook into a different build process if you've already got sort of an existing back end build process for your Ruby app or your Rails app or whatever have you. This is something that we're still working on at the moment, but there are people that are sort of already hacking on this with Yeoman, and we're going to do our best to share as much of that stuff as possible on the Yeoman group. Yep. But I think given another few months and the Yeoman story with other backends is going to be much, much better.
Yep, you can Google Yeoman PHP and see an attempt by Felix Ganaus.
Yes.
He wrote a little bit of Node middleware that will pull in a PHP server for the preview server. The challenge here is that we really want to be able to still provide the live reload functionality in the preview environment. So we have the live recompilation of SASS, CoffeeScript, etc., the live reload, so that the iteration flow is really solid, but we're still able to host this using your standard backend. So we just want to make sure that the way that this is implemented scales extremely well and still gives you that sort of iteration workflow that you want.
Yeah, and we want to do it right. We realize that you guys have got very different stacks all over the place, and so we want to do our best to make sure we support as much of this stuff as possible if you guys want to hack on it.
Cool. All right. I guess that'll do it. So thank you guys very much for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.